remind members of the public that they can observe council proceedings by accessing the Town of Shelburne YouTube page. These meetings can be watched live stream and also can be watched at a later date through the archive function. Is the national anthem working tonight, Jennifer?
Let's hope my system doesn't crash this time. Yes.
Okay, well, let's give it a shot. So if you can, please join us and stand for the playing of our national anthem.
You're muted, sir.
Thank you. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interests tonight from any member of council? Okay. All right, so moving on to the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the January 25th council meeting? Councillor Donato, seconded by Councillor Fegan. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Okay, all in favor? It's carried. All right, so the first item is a planning public meeting to deal with the site-specific zoning amendment that was referred to in the Committee of Adjustment meeting. So tonight's public meeting under Section 34 of the Planning Act is to consider an application for zoning bylaw amendment for lands municipally known as 302 First Avenue East. The purpose and effect of the amendment is to rezone the property from residential type 2, which is R2 zone, to residential type 4, or the R4 zone, and a new site-specific residential type 2 exception zone. Madam Clerk, what was the method of notice for tonight's public meeting?
Notice of tonight's public meeting was advertised in local media sources as of January 14th, 2021. Notice has been posted on the town's website, and notice was provided to property owners within a 120-meter radius of the subject property.
Okay, thank you. Steve Weaver will provide us with a presentation, again, following which there will be an opportunity for members of council to ask questions, as well as members of the public. The clerk will also accept written submissions, and all submissions, whether they are written or oral, will be given proper consideration by council prior to any decision being made. Jennifer, is there some sort of sign-in sheet that members of the public are required to fill out? I mean, virtually, obviously. Do they send you an email to be added to a list?
They are required to email me directly.
Okay. Okay, Steve, take it away.
Okay, and as referenced in the Committee of Adjustment meeting just prior to this meeting, there is a related zoning application for 302 First Avenue East, and that's the content of the public meeting for tonight for council. So the application information is just summarized on this slide. And just to recap again, the subject property is located at the northeast corner of First Avenue East and James Street. There is a proposed lot severance at the north end of the property as shown here. And the property is currently zoned R2. So this slide just summarizes the proposed site-specific zoning for the existing lot, the retained lot with the existing house on it. I mentioned during the consent committee of adjustment public meeting that the existing side yard along James Street is less than currently permitted by the zoning bylaw, and that's an existing legal non-complying situation. So the intent with this rezoning in conjunction with the severance would be to recognize that existing situation and recognize that 0.7 meter side yard. Also, by virtue of the severance with that additional lot line, the attached garage would only be 6.4 meters from that line as opposed to 7.5 meters. So there'd be a reduced rear yard, but only for the existing attached garage. It wouldn't allow the rest of the house to be extended back to that 6.4 meter line. There is a maximum setback requirement in the R2 zone, and it doesn't quite work with the positioning of the existing dwelling. So again, that's an existing situation that would be recognized to allow that existing dwelling to be acknowledged in its current location. And one of the main purposes of the rezoning application is also to request council's permission to allow up to 3 dwelling units within that existing house on the property. And also to allow tandem parking, which really refers to allowing, basically the front driveway and cars parking one behind the other to satisfy the minimum parking requirement for those 3 dwelling units. So if I can go back for a second to this, you can see the front yard driveway here. The driveway is wide enough for 2 cars to park side by side. There is an attached garage, which is just a single car garage. So there's 1 space available in the garage. The driveway is wide enough, as I mentioned, for 2 cars side by side. It's also long enough for 2 cars, behind those first 2 cars. Depends in part on the length and type of vehicle, but in theory, there's about as many as 5 parking spaces available within that driveway and garage. So that does satisfy the minimum parking required by the zoning bylaw, which is 1 space per unit. There is a requirement in the zoning bylaw that required parking cannot be provided in the front 6 meters of the property. So the 3 spaces would have to be provided in 1 in the garage and 2 that are at least 6 meters back from the front lot line. What the zoning application requests is that allow 1 of the or 2 of the 3 parking spaces to be permitted in a tandem format, so that the 1 in the garage is not is potentially obstructed by 1 in the front yard driveway, and the a parking space behind that again would obstruct the 1 in the driveway ahead of that. So that kind of configuration does require obviously some coordination amongst tenants to move vehicles around in and out of driveways if that situation is permitted. I will mention that for at least the 2nd unit, the provincial regulations under the Planning Act do say municipalities are required to allow tandem parking to facilitate the parking requirements for an additional residential unit. Now that only applies to a 2nd unit within the house and a 3rd unit if it's added in a detached building. So if there was another building added to the same lot with a 3rd unit, you are required to, the municipalities are required to allow 3 parking spaces to be provided in that tandem format. However, there's nothing in the regulations that say the municipality has to permit 3 units within a house, nor that the 3rd unit in the house has to be accommodated by way of tandem parking. So it does look like they can do 1 space in the garage, 1 in front of the garage. So those would be the tandem spaces. And then the 3rd, beside without having, the requirement to move around vehicles to access that third space. So I know that's all a little bit complicated in terms of the parking and why that's been requested, but it does relate back to that provincial regulation. The other aspect of the rezoning is just to rezone the north proposed lot to R4. There's no site-specific provisions requested for that. It would just be R4 because the proposed lot is less than the minimum lot area required for the R2 zone. This table is in my report, and it just highlights the exceptions requested for the retained lot. Again, the severed lot would meet all the R4 zone requirements. The retained lot would have an exception for the side yard, an exception for the rear yard, only for that existing attached garage, an exception for the dwelling and its distance from the street center line, an exception to allow 3 parking spaces with 1 provided in a tandem format. That instead of limiting the maximum number of units in the existing house to 2, it would limit it to 3, so an increase of 1 unit. And that similar to the variance that was considered earlier tonight by the Committee of Adjustment, relief from the requirement as it relates to the definition of a basement and a cellar to allow at least one of the units, or sorry, a maximum of 1 unit within the lower level of the dwelling. So that's the extent of the zoning request. I did summarize through the Committee of Adjustment presentation the comments received through the circulation. There's really nothing further through that circulation that came in specific to the zoning, and I'm not aware of any public comments or objections received as of yet. We have included, if I can stop sharing my screen, we have included within the agenda package a draft of the zoning bylaw as well. So should there be no comments or concerns, or if council is comfortable with making a decision on the zoning bylaw tonight as recommended, it is available for council consideration of passage tonight, but there's no requirement to make a decision at this meeting. It can come, you can request it to come back if there's any comments that require further information. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions of myself or the applicant. Thank you.
Any questions from council? I have one for the applicant, Tyson, if you're online there.
Yeah, we're here.
So just in terms of the configuration of the existing house. Hey guys.
Hey.
Is the plan to basically duplex the ground floor into 2 units and then have 1 unit in the basement?
No, to leave the 3-bedroom upstairs intact and then to have 2 bachelors downstairs.
Okay. Steve?
Sorry, I misspoke. The other application for 885 O'Reilly is the one that's the maximum of 1 unit below grade.
Okay.
We did not put that in the proposed rezoning for this one.
Okay, so this is okay then?
It would allow up to 2
okay.
units the way we've structured it in the basement. 1 unit on the main floor and 2 below grade.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to be clear on that. Okay, thanks guys.
Thanks.
Anything else from council? Jennifer, is there anybody from the public on for this meeting?
No, Your Worship, there's not.
Okay. All right. Last call. Okay. All right. So the motion contained in the agenda is recommended reads, be it resolved, the council receives report P 2021-05 for information, and that leave be given for the reading and enacting of bylaw number 4-2021, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 38-2007 as amended by rezoning the lands municipally known as 302 First Avenue East in the town of Shelburne from residential type 2 zone to residential type 2 exception 5 and residential type 4 zone as shown on schedule A1 to the bylaw. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Buffett, seconded by Councillor Fegan. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Take care. All right. Were there any questions for question period, Jennifer?
No, Your Worship, no questions this evening.
Okay. All right. We did the proclamation earlier this evening. So that takes us to council inquiries. Any inquiries tonight? Have we lost the deputy mayor?
Here he is. He's coming back. We did for a minute there.
Councillor Bernardo? Oh, you're muted. It's all right. I did it tonight too.
Yeah. Quick question for Jim. On Old Village Lane on the sidewalk, there's two utility units, hydro box and a bell. And when our street cleaner comes through, it can't go in between there because they're so tight to the sidewalks. Can we have somebody clean the sidewalk because they plow the snow, go back around both of those units and then start down the street again, and they leave a huge pile of snow in between the two units, and people have a hard time walking because the snow always piled in there.
Okay, sure. Through your worship, I will mention that to Public Works tomorrow morning, and we'll see what we can do with it.
Okay. Any other inquiries? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I want to inquire about broadband in Dufferin County because my connection is really bad. So I'm sorry about that. But on a serious note, I wanted to follow up on the Community Service Awards. I know obviously we're not doing that in person, and I believe we were doing that virtually. So I was just wondering if there has been a time carved out for that.
Jennifer?
Through Your Worship, there's been no time carved out for that. I'm waiting for responses back from other folks that have also been nominated to receive an award, and I'm hoping that we can have one all-inclusive meeting with everyone in attendance.
Okay. All right, last call for inquiries. Okay. All right, so the first report is from our treasurer regarding the 2020 council statement of remuneration. Carrie, do you want to discuss that at all? That this is a statutory requirement, I think, isn't it?
Yes, thank you through the mayor. It is an annual report that is required under the Municipal Act, and it's fairly self-explanatory. The only difference this year, or sorry, for 2020, was that all conferences were canceled due to COVID, so there is no expense line in there for any conferences that council would have normally attended.
Okay. Are there any questions on that? No. Okay. Can I get a motion to receive that report then? Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Hall. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, next is a report from our Economic Development and Marketing Coordinator regarding business e-commerce website community collaboration project. And I understand Denise is going to speak to this.
Thank you, Mayor Mills. Through yourself. The report is before council primarily because it requires an agreement to be signed with the funding agency. And by virtue of that, we need your approval. So just general background is initiatives were put in place in response to some of the challenges that many of our local businesses face who don't have strong e-commerce or online web-based sales opportunities. We reviewed a number of different platforms that would facilitate that being part of our website with a mall-like, as they say, a platform that was determined to be the best application based on other communities and local BIAs that use that. We've received a grant of about $7,200 for year one in order for us to provide this service. And should we want to continue with it post the initial year, then we would consider through the budget process for council's consideration, including $2,300 annually to continue it, unless of course we found other grant funding in subsequent years. So that really is the summary of the report. We just would like to get the agreement formalized so that we can launch this great new, hopefully, support for our local businesses and do a test pilot for the first year. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Wagner?
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's a great idea. Definitely. Now, moving forward, if it is something that we want to continue, as you just mentioned, we would be looking within the budget to fund it. If that's the case, what businesses would then be would qualify for it? Because if we're going to be using sort of budgetary money in order to fund something like this, is it all businesses? Is it downtown core only? Like what are we looking at here for the businesses that could qualify?
Through the mayor, I have to follow up with Carol. My understanding is that it's all Shelburne businesses. It's not simply downtown BIA. It's not being funded through the BIA. The application was made by the town of Shelburne, and a number of different platforms were also reviewed with presentations to the BIA, to the Economic Development Committee, to have their input, as well as some businesses to let them, I guess, provide us with feedback on what's the most, I guess, viable platform for them. It's quite common for a municipality to serve as the primary source through their webpage to provide continuity and reliability for business. And again, I'll follow up with our EDC coordinator. I don't believe, Councillor Wagner, that it precludes any business that needs that kind of support within the town of Shelburne, as long as they're a registered business, from participating.
That was my next question.
You must be registered.
Okay.
I mean, that is going to be a minimal requirement for your participation as a business. You need to be a registered business.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just by way of a little bit of background too, the first sort of idea, came about as part of the local business task force that we established early on during the pandemic. And through Carol Maitland, that group looked at several different platforms, and we involved some of the downtown businesses to get their feedback. And one of the barriers to all of them seemed to be cost. So if it was going to cost the business basically anything, at that point they weren't really all that eager to lay out further expenditures in something new. So the fact that this, at least for the first year on a trial basis, can be done free of charge, I think will give us a good sense at least of whether or not it's effective. Obviously for retail stores, they can offer goods online. A business like yours, Councillor Wagner, or like mine, for example, that's more service oriented, it may not fit as well, but we did talk about that too, that at the very least it could provide an online presence for advertising, if nothing else. So I think the idea is let's try this for a year. We were lucky enough to get the grant funding, so it's not going to cost us anything, and we'll see if it works, and if it does, then we can assess that going forward. So any other questions or comments on that? Okay, can I get a motion to receive the report then, as well as authorize myself and the clerk to enter into the agreement with Innovation Guelph? Moved by Councillor Wagner, seconded by Councillor Hall. All in favor? It's carried. All right, next is a letter from KTH regarding community improvement to KTH Park. So essentially, as I read it, KTH is wondering if, rather than them do the work themselves, that they just provide the financial contribution of the town, and then we organize that. Does staff have any thought on that approach? Denise?
Sorry, I was muted. I'm Linda. I'm just kidding, Linda, sorry.
We're all guilty tonight.
The only thing we just want to confirm with KTH, and it's a very generous contribution that they've made, that should the budget need to be increased due to any costs associated with the project and us managing it, that would be, I guess, considered in consultation with them once we had a better idea of the overall production materials as well as installation costs.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if KTH is going to answer that.
Well, yeah, I don't know if that can come tonight or not. Councillor Hall, you may have some insight.
I do. And while I'll partake in the discussion, I will not partake in the vote tonight on this item. KTH is willing and will be covering any in excess if it does come to that. And if it comes in under, then that donation is just staying at that. There's no expected return if it's an under budget.
Well, thanks again, and please pass that along to your colleagues at KTH on behalf of council and the whole community. It's very generous, and hopefully we can get that done this year. So, okay. Can I get a motion to receive that letter then from KTH? Councillor Fegan, seconded by Councillor Bernardo. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, next is a bylaw regarding the parking requirements within the municipal parking lot. So that this is in follow-up to the rather lengthy discussion we had at our last meeting. And Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, but this bylaw just formalizes the arrangement that we kind of agreed to in principle at the last meeting.
That's correct. Yes, Your Worship. The bylaw included in the agenda tonight, those items highlighted in yellow is what has been added to or changed within the current traffic bylaw.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion for the reading and enacting of bylaw number 5-2021 being a bylaw to amend the traffic bylaw, which was number 8-1983? Councillor Buffett, second by Councillor Bernardo. Any additional thoughts on that? All in favor? It's carried. Okay. Any notices of motion for this evening? No. Okay. Into communications, 12 items listed there. There's one that I would like, or sorry, 14 items. There's one that I would like to pull off the bat, actually two, sorry. Number 1 and number 8. Is there anything else that anybody would like to address? Councillor Wagner?
Hi, yes, thank you. I would like to address number 3 and number 12.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to go first or if you want to go first and then I can go second, whatever.
Yeah, I think I saw Councillor Fegan's hand as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that in the package that I've received, unfortunately, I don't have an attachment for number 6 or for 13. I don't know if I've just got a bad link or something, if there's a possibility that I can see those later on.
I can send them as a separate item.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Anything else before we start discussing the 4? No? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Wagner.
Thank you very much. So with number 3, the letter being received about the closure of the fire college. I've had a community member sort of reach out to me with some concerns of this closure. So his concerns that he expressed are, worried about the negative effects that this will have on the fire community with regards to providing a high level quality of training and accessing affordable training. As it's noted in the letter, it is the only provincial training facility in Ontario, and the cost is substantially less to attend this college for training than other avenues. So I guess my question would be the route we would go in order to potentially support, acknowledging that we wouldn't like to see this closed to the provincial government.
I guess there's two things we could do, or a combination of both. We could pass a motion in support of OPSU's letter. I guess we could also defer it to the fire board and have them chime in, or we could do both.
Okay.
Councillor Bernardo, when's the next fire board meeting? You're muted. We're pretty rusty tonight. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all new.
The board meeting won't be till March, but I think it still should be deferred over to them because the fire chief and the deputy fire chief are the ones that send our volunteer firefighters to the colleges, gets them informed. The way I understood the letter is the closure of the college is because the firefighters right now go at their own expense up to the college, and they have to take time off from work or whatever they're doing to go there if they're not on vacation, or they lose their vacations doing that. My understanding from the letter is they're breaking it up so that they come to the communities and do the actual teaching within the communities, so that, if, for example, there were enough volunteer firefighters from Dundalk and Shelburne gathered together, the trainers would come in and do it within the community. That's why I'd like to hear comments from the fire chief and the deputy fire chief and those that actually have to go, to the college to get their training, whether this is a better format for them or a worse format. So if we can wait for that, I think that would be a better system on number 3.
Okay. Denise, did I want to add
So through the mayor, I think it would be also beneficial for council to have the analysis that was completed by the province in order for them to move in this direction. And similar to what Councillor Bonato just mentioned, I mean, I know that their model was supposed to make it more accessible and affordable and ensure that you didn't have to travel as far in order to participate, including the fact that some of the training may eventually be ported to virtual where it's applicable. So I think before you take a position, you may want to ensure that you have an understanding of the council's direction and pair that with the input from the fire chief and the department.
Okay.
Perfect.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Wagner?
Definitely. I just wanted to make sure that I brought forward the community members who's part of the fire department as well, just his concerns, and then that way I can reply back to him with that we spoke about it and that it is on our radar, and the fire board will address it.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
And number 12.
Yes. So number 12, as we've sort of discussed in previous meetings about the potential support for opening small businesses. The last time we spoke about this, we sort of deferred because Ford was to be coming out with potentially further restrictions. We are now past that point, and we are seeing some small changes happening. However, there are still some that will remain closed. I know that there's, a possibility if we're not going into gray and things like that, that they will be open. However, I do feel like at least if we can send a letter of support or something of that nature, just in case, we don't end up being in the opportunity for our service-based businesses to open back up. I feel strongly that with certain restrictions in place, our small businesses can definitely operate without being considered super spreaders.
Okay. So would you like to make a motion then in support of the motion from Township of North Glengarry?
Yes, please. I don't know how I should word it though.
Jennifer, can you sort of craft the finite details of that?
Yep, that the Corporation of the Town of Shelburne supports the letter from the Township of North Glengarry regarding support for small businesses.
Okay.
Does that work?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Buffett? Okay, any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay, excellent. So the two that I wanted, number one was the CDRC report and 2021 draft budget. In reviewing that, if everybody's had a chance, I mean, obviously there's going to be some financial impacts on the CDRC budget going forward, which I don't think comes as any surprise. But seeing as though the town of Shelburne funds 62% of that budget, I was hoping that our treasurer might be able to provide some analysis at a future meeting when it comes to the ask of the CDRC board, just to speak to whether or not what they're asking is doable from our perspective. Is that something you can do, Carrie?
For sure. Yes,
Okay.
I can.
Do we need a formal motion for that, Jennifer? Or?
No.
Okay. Okay, and then the second one that I had was number 8. Sorry, we're jumping sort of all over the place here, but it was the letter from Grey Highlands regarding municipal insurance rates. And essentially what Grey Highlands is asking for is for the province to consider AMO's recommendations with respect to joint and several liability. And similar to Councillor Wagner's motion, I would just like to make a motion in support of Grey Highlands resolution. I think we'll likely see a number of municipalities jump on this. It's certainly been a hot topic at AMO for a long time. But it's one of those things that just doesn't seem to be moving too quickly down the field. So, and any nudge that we can provide to try to move the government on this, I think will be helpful. We've seen it here with the increase in our insurance rates, both for council and in terms of our boards. The county's seen it. I know the deputy mayor and I can both attest to that. So I think it's high time that they take a serious look at this. So I'll make that motion if I can have a seconder. Councillor Fegan. Any discussion on that one? All in favor? That's carried. Okay. And then just a general motion to receive the remaining items listed under communications for information. Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Wagner. All in favor? It's carried. And a motion for the confirming bylaw. Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Buffett. All in favor? It's carried. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. All right. Thank you all. Not too bad once we got through the Committee of Adjustment stuff.